Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the program. Today we're going to go to the Cyclades again and talk about some really groundbreaking stuff regarding archaic humans, their first movements into the area or out of the area, and what the geography was like at the time. So it revolves around Asia Minor, basically modern-day Turkey and Greece, and this link here, this land bridge here. Well, the prevailing theory has always been that people who were moving out of Africa through the Levant and into Europe were going by way of this land bridge in Turkey. Well, now they've found some stuff in Naxos, which is one of this large island here, which is essentially a mountain range, and its a location in the center of the Cyclades Islands, which are all these islands here on the southern part of the Aegean Sea, and how once upon a time it used to be kind of like a meeting point for people who were crossing what was then the Aegean Basin, meaning this was a marshland at one point, and they found some tools that are indicative of people who were coming and going through here around 200,000 years ago. That is basically what we're talking about here. So the article, it comes from Haaretz, by the way, and it reads, early humans reached Greek island 200,000 years ago, so it changes largely the picture of the spread from Africa of Homo sapiens and other archaic humans as well. So when the Aegean wasn't a sea, this island, again, Naxos, was important just because it was rich, full of all these different stone tools. And I've done a few episodes before where they're unearthing a lot of these palaces, and this civilization, or whatever you want to call them, these people who were living here, the Cyclades, they were concurrent with the Minoan population, the Minoan civilization around 2000 BC. These new discoveries of stone tools on the Greek island go back to at least 200,000 years, and we'll kind of walk through exactly their process in a second here. And it appears that there were Neanderthals and early humans who were at the island. So this is this new information dump, essentially, because if you've seen my other episodes in the area, there's been an ongoing project for I think spanning almost 30 years now, where they just keep finding and analyzing and dating things, and they've slowly built this case over 30 or so years that there were people there really early on, and they somehow got there through seafaring. So they were one of the earliest Western seafarers, even in modern archaeology and academia. But now there are Neanderthals who are also capable, and other archaic humans as well, who are capable of seafaring and were meeting concurrently with these humans here at some point. So the reason why this is just coming out now is it didn't occur to science to seek archaic human remains on any Aegean islands, because they didn't think that ancient humans were seafarers. They just underestimated that, and I've talked at length about that in other videos, where stuff like that just gets overlooked just because there's this built-in bias, or whatever you want to call it, to not change their opinion, their archaeological opinion on certain things. But of course they find these tools, so they must have gotten there either on foot or through boats, obviously, but they could have gotten there by foot because, again, this area was marshland. So they didn't have to, the Neanderthals didn't have to be seafarers. They could have gotten there another way. And then that would make Naxos here probably a huge mountaintop in the middle of this basin, and that would have been a likely marker for them to stop and make makeshift settlements, or what this article says, create these tools. These tools here. There are these deposits on the island where they can mine these and create stone tools out of them. But we'll get there in a second. The Aegean, in other words, wasn't there. Naxos seems to be in times part of a terrestrial continuum, meaning some sort of nexus point or meeting point. I wonder if those words are related, Naxos and nexus. There might be some sort of connection there. I don't even know if I'm saying that correctly. Naxos, maybe? Entering Europe via what today is the submerged Aegean Basin, the island of Naxos. So they were extracting Chert, which is this, to make their tools. And this is a pretty a drone shot of of the island here. I think that's the northern part of the island, Apollonius. So the discovery of hominin activity on Stellita, Naxos, 100,000 years ago, changes the theory of how humans dispersed out of Africa. So I think that is on the western part, actually. I had a map somewhere. I'm just not going to bring it up, but I think it's somewhere in that part of the island. It doesn't really matter. There were people there 200,000 years ago, so it doesn't really change the fact exactly, as long as it's somewhere on the island there. And it does make sense, right? If the water level were lower than 150 feet than it is now, then it would make sense that there'd at least be a lot more islands. And let's not forget the fact that there's stuff on the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea as well that were clearly foundations for buildings and stuff like that hasn't really hasn't been analyzed too much yet, but they have been reports of a lot of submerged cities essentially down there, these megaliths down there. So no ancient bones have been found on Naxos, but then they did find these stone tools, and they found a mixture of these tools. So there are three types that I'll just describe here. So Mousterian and Levallois style, which are associated with Neanderthals. So these two, I've talked briefly about them in a video I did like a year ago, and these are usually attributed to Neanderthals in Greece specifically. So so they found these two styles, these Neanderthal type tools, and then they found the Aurignacian type, which is associated with us, the AMHs, anatomically modern humans, or Homo sapiens, whatever you want to call it. So they found these three concurrent with each other. And these actually date tens of thousands of years before the Neanderthals, let alone modern humans. So that's why they think that those might be another offshoot of archaic human that we're not sure about. It makes a lot of sense, especially if you think about haplogroups. So just real quick, haplogroups were thought to have been initially 4 or 5 distinct types. And haplogroup just means a distinct type. That's literally what it means. And so there's A, B, C, D, and E, I think. And then later on, they found another one that was like X, that they called X, that they found sprinkled in Britain and other parts of southeastern Europe. And they even found some in North America as well that date as recently as maybe like 2,000 years ago or something like that. But then anyway, now there are 41 or 42 different types of haplogroups now that they know about. And that just makes sense. What are Neanderthals if not just another, albeit extreme, type of haplogroup that is related distantly to us? So anyway, yeah, long story short, it just wouldn't surprise me that there were another archaic form of Neanderthals in this site here, because we're talking 200,000 or more years ago. That's a lot of gap to fill in terms of human history. And if you believe that it was just AMHs, I don't know. I just think the margin of error is too large, and that coupled with the fact that there are notorious Neanderthal tools there, plus another type of tool that we're not sure, but predates the Neanderthals, and I think it's kind of safe to say that there's probably, at the very least, some different haplogroup there. So if Neanderthals spread to the Levant, Anatolia, and Aegean around 130,000 years ago, and anatomically modern humans only 45,000 years ago, which is the current thinking, who were the earlier people of Chert rock for tools 200,000 or more years ago? They think it's Heidelbergensis, which is a type of... at first they thought it was a type of Homo erectus, but then there were some peculiar things about it, like the shape of its skull and stuff, that made them think that it was a completely different offshoot of humanity, and that was found in southern and northern Greece. So these people were also living a few thousand years before the Neanderthals even got there, the Mousterian tool users and so on. They might have, as for how they crossed, they might have stuck to the coast. We talked about coast surfing from Japan, so the northern part of Japan, across Russia, all the way around to Alaska, and they did this big U-turn down the California coast, all the way down to South America. So these stick by the coast navigational strategy they might have used, and I mean, again, that would have worked for sure, because the Aegean Sea is by no means a huge, comparatively anyway, to a body of water as, like, say, the Pacific Ocean or even the Atlantic Ocean. As for early humans, they weren't. They must have got there by boat 60,000 years ago. Meaning Australia. They must have gotten there by boat for sure. So the idea of archaic boating is not a new idea. It's been demonstrated in other parts of the world. So basically, there were more than one way to cross this, to get into Europe from Turkey, and that was this Marmara Thrace land bridge here, and then there's this marshy crossing, the Cyclades way, so either by foot or by boat. And then if they were to cross through here, through the marshland, then this would have been an obvious pit stop here, just because, again, they found the abundance of stone tools here. There's a quarry here, and it seems like some of the oldest stuff that survived is based there. So just by statistics, there must have been at one point a large gathering of people pretty regularly for an extended amount of time for them to leave stuff that survives to this day. That's where they're coming from. So again, the discovery of tools possibly made by Homo heidelbergensis 200,000 years ago suggests that Naxos was not then an inaccessible island, but was part of the Yellow Chert Road to Europe, and that definitely would make sense, especially if we talked about... it's a similar idea to intervisibility in the area of Australia, New Guinea, and Sundaland, except this was a marshland, so they could have just walked across instead of having to use these coastal boats. These shallow water boats. So they found this jaw and Mislia cave that I did in Israel. So these are all like some of the oldest modern human stuff found in recent history. There again, I always point to the 315,000-year-old guy they found in modern day Morocco. That's the oldest by far, but these are some of the most recent. This guy in Saudi Arabia, and then this one in China. I did videos on all of these, which is right under 100,000 years ago. So this, however, changes that narrative of there was no one who crossed into out of Africa and into Europe and through Asia Minor way more recently than this claims to be. So but there seemed to disappear, perhaps retreating back to warmer African. So okay, so this part of the article is talking about one of their different migrations into this part here, Israel and the Levant. So there was one migration a while ago of humans, and then the Neanderthals came back and they occupied this land, and then again there's a second migration of modern humans that displaced the Neanderthals that came back. So it's very complicated, these dispersals. And right now, the latest thinking, the latest established thinking is that all the early Homo sapiens exits from Africa went extinct. So these people, where is it? So these people that went in, the part of that first wave, that first failed wave, they're all dead. And then 60,000 years later, another group, at the very least 60,000 years later, another group went through. And all the people of Europe today are spawned from these people. That's what the prevailing thinking is. So again, I don't know what that is, but it's hard to think that all of them went extinct, especially since they left all of these tools here. It seems like they were doing something right. But yeah, the point is that some of these early people crossed into Europe, and that was essentially the bottom of the Aegean Sea. So anyway, I feel like I was rambling this episode. So let me know what you guys think about this, about the Aegean Sea, about it being a basin, about this migration of people, haplogroups, anything at all. Leave a comment, and I'll talk to you guys later.